value proposition canvas, I want to talk to you about what does it mean, right? So what does a value proposition mean? Does anyone know? Does anyone have thoughts around it?
Maybe like propositioning means like, proposing something, and then value is like a value, proposing what the value is.
Yeah, absolutely. That is correct. It is where a business communicates the value that they are offering to their customers, to the market. So it's basically a succinct way of understanding what is the value that your business is delivering. Is it actually solving customer needs? Is it aligning to what the customers are saying are their pain points and their gains? So yeah, in yesterday's session, just tying it back to that, we talked about customer research and validation. And that's where we talk about understanding what the customer perspective is, the context, what the lowest common denominator in terms of the personas that you need to represent, understanding extreme users and what they're saying and in terms of the feedback to the current experience that they're having. And you, as you do that, you will start defining what those customer jobs are. So it's functional, emotional, or social jobs that the customers are trying to get done in their work or life, and the gains and the pains associated with that. So I'll go a bit more into detail around it, but these are things that will come out of your persona work. It'll come out of your empathy map. It'll be things that will come out of your, if you're doing a user profile or a customer insights canvas, there's multiple templates to help you gather insights about your customer. And those insights will feed into this canvas. So it's not that you're going to re-engineer or do it again. We're going to use what we talked about in terms of the customer research, and then focus on how do we define our business to address those customer needs and pains. So with that said, what a value proposition canvas is allowing you to do is it's helping you make decisions for your business and position your product in a way that represents customer needs. So it's aligning your strategy and your idea and what you want to do about it to what your customer needs are. And it helps you produce a product that A, people want, B, makes sense for the business, and C, is feasible. So this is not going into the feasibility per se, but it's helping you make sure that your the business benefits of it are aligned with the customer benefits as well. When we're looking at ideas, especially in a hackathon, there's so many new ideas flowing every minute that it's easy to lose focus on what the core values are of your product and what you're looking to do, which is why sometimes, products don't actually fulfill customer expectations and don't often achieve the outcomes that you're looking for. And this value proposition canvas will act as a visual guide to help you target that and create a product that is high in demand for the segment that you're addressing. So we start with the customer profile, and that is the circular aspect of this canvas. And we talked about some of these things last time, but where you want to start with is understanding what tasks is your customer looking to do. So jobs to be done can include all the tasks from social, functional to emotional. And it can be anything that the customer is looking to solve, a problem they're facing, anything they want to satisfy. Oh, sorry, I just saw the chat. Yes, Rahima, what services and value will it provide to customers is a perfect answer for that. Getting back to the jobs. So when we talk about social jobs, it's about jobs that are motivated by societal duty, by optimism, aspiration, even fear. The things that we feel we have to do to fulfill a role in the relationships that we have and in society. And for example, when you're buying a car, it's not just that you're buying a car for yourself, but it's also to fulfill certain social jobs. It could be representing your social status. It could be about, picking up your neighbor's kids from school. There's a lot of social aspects to things that we do in our lives today. So it's understanding those. There's functional jobs, so they're just simple, practical things that people are getting to do in this context. So that will be just drive in the context of the car. It could be driving from home to the office. That's a practical functional job that the car needs to get me to do, right? I need to make my way from my home to my office, which is why I need a car. Then there's emotional jobs that come with our preferences, likes and dislikes, and our insecurities. And that's in terms of buying a car. If I go back to that, it will be the feeling that we want to get when driving the car. So my job to be done around that could be, hey, I want to feel luxurious. Maybe I want to feel trendy in my sports car. There's these feelings and emotions that you associate with products and services that you want to look into as well. So some questions that you can ask yourself, or you can ask your customers if you're doing an interview, to define these jobs to be done, could be, what function does your customer try to perform, right? So I know we had an example yesterday about someone who is autistic, who is a teacher, and what was it? Was looking to open a Montessori school, if I remember correctly. So for that person in this context, for that autistic person, what does it mean to open their business, right? So what do they need to do to be able to do that? So things like they'd need to get their company incorporated, they need to get space, they need to speak to people to get, I don't know, volunteers or teachers. They need to get marketing done. So those are all functional things that they would need, right? So those are some of the jobs that they need to be done. Another thing is, what are social goals that your customer is trying to accomplish? Because he's not opening a Montessori, he or she's not opening, actually was she, right? Not opening a Montessori school for herself. She's looking to help out people. She's looking to achieve a social goal as well. So understanding what those social goals are, what are your customers' emotional needs around this, right? So they would also be looking for support. They would be looking for, there's lots of feelings and emotions associated with the work that you do. So identifying those, asking yourself what jobs might make them feel satisfied. And there's more people joining, so I'll keep watching out for that. And if you guys have any questions through this, because again, I'm talking at you as I'm explaining this template, we will have time where we can discuss where you guys are at and if you have any questions around your specific problems. But I'm just going to quickly run through how you can approach this template and how you can use it. So going back to the jobs, the last few questions that you could ask could be, how does your customer want to feel? What does he or she need to do to get to feel that way? And track the interaction that your customer is having with this context that they want to set. So in terms of, starting this school or functioning in their life, and how do we make it easier? It could be, what works for your customer? What are they trying to do given the time? And how can we improve it? Next is the pains. And these are the annoyances and the problems in the customer experience today. Whether it be before, because it's never about just during the experience, right? It's also the decisioning that goes into doing something that happens at stage right before, the awareness of the fact that you need something, the decision that you're making to do something, and then you're doing, which is the during, and the after. So there could be pain points across that entire journey. So it's important to identify those. So all the factors that stop your customers from completing a job are called pains. So imagine them as roadblocks that they have to deal with. It could also include negative outcomes that the customers might prefer to avoid. And you can categorize pains as severe or light, depending on how you want to approach it. This is where you can start surfacing those key moments of truth that really matter. So it's quite actually useful if you do that. So the burning issues, the burning pains, well, I say some which are light and don't need to be prioritized just yet. Some questions that could help you come up with these pain points as you go through this is, what does your customer find maybe too costly, maybe takes too much time, too much money, too much effort? So what requires them to go out of the way to do something and sort of makes it inaccessible? What makes them feel bad? What are some of the current things that are available to them that are not suitable? What are some of their main challenges and problems in this space? Maybe it's a lack of understanding of how things work. Maybe it's difficulties with how to get started. So maybe for our persona who is starting a Montessori school, maybe it's about they don't know where to get the money. They're finding it difficult to make sense of the financial systems and the lending systems. So these are some of the challenges they'd be facing, right? So it's capturing that. What negative social consequences does the customer face or fear to face? And this is very important, right? When we talk about bias, especially. So is there something around credibility, trust, social status, and perception that also plays into their pain points today? And what are some of the risks, right, that they might feel? So they might fear financial ruin, they might fear social repercussions, technical issues in getting things done. Let's try and understand that. Does that make sense? Any questions on these pain points and the jobs? No?
No, Tanaya, I just want to also highlight, I think you already mentioned about, the yesterday activities like the empathy map and all. I think a lot of these could really come out from there. So if you guys done that already, this will be, easily pop them over to the value proposition canvas, especially on the customer segment side.
Yeah, absolutely. So all of this would be things that you're already like Will was saying, would be looking at within your empathy maps or your customer, like the personas. It's bringing that content here and making sure that you're capturing a holistic view. So you're looking at the emotional, the social, and the functional. It's a good template in that sense. And the next we go to gains. And the gains and motivations are also things, as Will mentioned, that we will be covering in as we gather the build the empathy with our customers, so especially in the personas and the empathy map. And you can bring that down here. So it includes the outcomes and benefits that your customers want to achieve. So it could include the positive experiences and desires that your customers wish to achieve. It could be ordinary or even existential. It's quite open, right? Because it's about your customer. There is no judgment here. And however, one thing to be careful of is gains is not the opposite of a pain, right? A pain point is something someone experiences. If something makes me sad versus something makes me happy, that's not the point here. Gains are things that I'm actually looking forward to that could make my life easy, that have nothing to do with my pains. There are aspects that encourage users to maybe adopt your product or service, create that emotional connection. And here are some questions that you could ask yourself as you start defining what your customer gains are. So what makes your customer truly, fulfilled, satisfied, or happy, which is in terms of time, money, effort, etc. What would they be looking for? What result are they expecting? And what can surpass these expectations? So as they're getting their jobs done, what is the kind of result that they're expecting? Especially when I'm going to buy a car, what are some of those gains, right? That I want to be able to, go off-road driving once in a while. I want to be able to take a road trip, right? Those are expectations that you're setting, and what the car needs to be able to achieve. So what would simplify the work or life of your customer? Bringing it back to the person who's opening the Montessori school, what would make their lives easier? What services, what features, what things that they can take advantage of in the world around them that could help them achieve their mission, or live their life better? What positive social consequences does your customers want to get, right? So how, what is the impact that they want to achieve? What are those positive social consequences? And what are they looking for? So it could be anything from like specific features, functions, guarantees. It could be a smart UI, UX, like user experience. There's a lot of times that we come in and like what they're looking for is an intuitive and easy way of getting things done, right? So that's just an example of a game. Any questions here? Any comments? Does this resonate with you guys, or does it kind of tie into what we talked about yesterday? Do you feel comfortable with this part of the canvas, the customer map?
I really liked how you said that intuitive way to wait. What did you say? Intuitive way to
an easy way to get things done.
Intuitive. Intuitive way to get things done. Right. I like that a lot, actually. That's a good way to think of games, right?
Yeah. And
Rather
what makes something intuitive, right? So understanding how people, so when you talk about UX design, this is a huge thing, right? Intuitive, that word, which is how do we start predicting how people will want to interact with something, or understanding how people are and using that data to inform your design in the future, and constantly work and develop it to make it more and more intuitive, almost like second nature.
That's such an interesting thing to think about, because like then you really have to go into like psychology almost to like see like what makes things easier for people, because I mean that varies too based on like their abilities.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why a lot of products that don't, that don't have a full understanding of their target customer base, what their needs are, what are they looking for, what makes things intuitive for them. Like you said, the psychology, it doesn't have to be deep psychology, right? But it's just building that empathy, giving your users a place at the table where you're understanding what they care about, and making sure that what you're doing is not just based on what you want, but it's solving a certain need that your target customer has, and making their lives easy. So it's about the customer. So most of the successful products that you see they do this research, they do the homework. And it's a very important aspect of assessing someone's, well, not just the value proposition, but someone's pitch, right? Is it actually solving a need? Is there going to be a market for this product? And there's only going to be a market if there's a customer at the end of it that's going to buy your product. And they're only going to buy your product if it solves a need for them.
That makes total sense.
Yeah. So this is very important as you work through your ideas through this hackathon, that you really make sense of what your target customer base is, and what they're trying to do, especially if there's a product that's, I don't know, if it's an application that's about building financial literacy. So what you're trying to do is someone that is going to engage with your product to make sense of information that is difficult for them to understand and comprehend. So they're learning as they go. So our jobs to be done would be things like that, which is understanding content, making sense of content. As a user, I want to feel that it's accessible, right? That it makes sense to me. It's not the verbiage and the words are not so complicated that it's just bounces off my head. Like I want to connect with the content. So all of those things are the emotional aspects, and those emotional needs are things that you should think about and consider as you design your solutions. Any questions here? Any thoughts, comments? Will, do you want to add anything to this?
No, I think it's good. I think just that, as we cover the other building blocks, which is on the product and services side, I think they can very well see how this thing fit together. So the whole idea is really, if you already have that idea of your product and services, so you have the customer pains, gains, and what is the job to be done, you'll be able to find the fit between the product and services with the customer and identify the customer value and get that fit. And if you find that there is the gap over there, is where you then try to iterate a little bit on your product and services. With that iteration, what it means by you could go and do a face-to-face interview, you could do a testing with your potential customers, and then identify the different gaps there, and really build on your value proposition canvas.
And that's a great segue, thank you, Will, into our next bit of this canvas, which is as you would call it, it's the value map. And this is where it's all about what you're doing, right? Your solution. So you want to start with listing out all the different services and features and whatnot about your product or service. It lists them out, and this is where you capture everything, right? All of your ideas. You'll start synthesizing them a bit later, but here just list everything that you want your idea to do. Next, you will then look at the pain relievers. So it is in terms of focus on elements of your idea that will remove a current frustration that your customer has. So the pain relievers tie in with the pains. So you need to make sure that you're at least solving some of the pains that your customers are experiencing. So your pain relievers need to tie to that. And the next you have the gain creators, which is everything that offers something new or improves the user experience. So it's how does your product or service create customer gains, so the outcomes and benefits that your customers expect. And that kind of ties nicely in with the gains that you've listed. So if your product creates that gain for them that they're talking about, then you know that you're building something that will deliver value. Now let's go into the details of each. So when you talk about products and services, you can list everything from like whether it's free, whether there is a trial version of your product, whether it's a premium feature, list it all down. And focus on how these different features and products may help your customers get their job done. So remember how we first listed out the things that our customers are looking to do? So functional, emotional, and social jobs. Your products and services should tie in with what to help them do what they're looking to do. Right? Then you go into the pain relievers. So once you've listed down everything, you go into the pain relievers. And this is where you focus on how your product will ease the customer's pain. These relievers should be relevant to the pains mentioned, like I said, on the other customer profile. And different sort of pain. Oh, does anyone want to say anything? No? Okay. Yeah, so different sort of pain relievers are made for different kinds of pain. And it isn't necessary that you basically do a one-for-one match and discuss the whole pain in detail. It's just a simple statement that tells you, okay, here's something that it'll help relieve. So I'll like before, I'll give you some of the questions that you could ask yourself. So some of those questions to help you understand what your pain relievers could be. Does your product or service provide some sort of savings in terms of time, in terms of effort, in terms of money? Because that could be a pain reliever. Does it improve the emotional state of your customer? So does it maybe decrease their frustration, maybe take away things that bring a headache in when they're trying to get their jobs done? Maybe decreases their grief or decreases them feeling alienated maybe or lonely. So yeah, does it improve the emotional state of your customer? Does it fix the defects of their current experience or existing solutions that they're using? Does it remove the difficulties or problems that they face in life? Or does your product or service exclude the negative social consequences that they're encountering or which they're afraid of? And this could be key, right? And when we speak of bias, especially through this hackathon, does your idea really solve for some of the negative social consequences for bias for your particular customer segment? Does it maybe reduce risks that your customer is facing? Does it help them sleep better at night? Does it limit some of the mistakes, the common mistakes that they might be making in getting their job done? Or does it eliminate barriers to entry or barriers that stop them from achieving their goals? So those are the kind of questions you want to ask yourself when you think about pain relievers. I'll stop here as well. I'll pause. Do you guys have any questions around this? Is it making sense? And how the whole thing, the story is tying together?
I think so. I think like maybe like when you do like a less like an example, it will help like maybe just make this abstract concept a little bit more easy to digest.
Yeah.
But later.
Yeah, I could actually do that. We could talk about the car. Let's say if we're talking about the car buying experience, right? What are in terms of pain relievers? It could be things that fact that it's and maybe an energy efficient car. Maybe it's got an automatic function. Maybe it's got built-in personalization in terms of how I'm sitting and whatnot, and just to get started. Maybe it's got a jet fuel engine that helps me run through things. I don't know. It could. It's talking about things about your product that are relieving certain pains that I'm having today. It could be going back to the Ford car. It could be something that is disability like friendly. It's a car that actually helps me get from point A to point B, given that most cars are not accessible for me. It could be different things that your product is doing that is solving an emotionally functional pain that I am experiencing today.
Tanaya, can I add on that? Sometimes when I buy a new car, I think one of the pain point when having a car is always about the warranty. So you worried about the warranty. So the pain side might be, you worried about the reliability of the car. And I think one example from the pain reliever will be if the car company do provide, like warranty services over a number of years, that could be a pain reliever for me as a customer.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know why I started with this car example because, well, actually, I've never bought a car, so I don't have any points or pain relievers associated with it. But it's an example.
Yep. It is. I own like the Volkswagen. They are famous for having a lot of issue with the engine and all. I'm suffering all that. I hope they have longer longer warranties and stuff.
Oh, so then you're the perfect person to tell us an example about this car buying.
Exactly, it just relate to me so much, so I have to jump in with that.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you for that. Any other questions from anyone? Did that kind of help you make sense of it a bit more, Anita?
Yeah. And what kind of car are you buying, Will?
Are you buying a car?
I haven't planned for the next one, but I think I will definitely look for something that can relieve my pain, which is longer warranty. That if anything came out, any issue, at least I can bring back to the company to service my car. That will be a huge criteria that I'll look into.
But I feel like that's also balanced with like how much that costs, right? Because you're not going to pay infinite amount for like a warranty.
Definitely.
And the pain reliever could be that, right? Which is why when we asked ourselves, like, does it actually lower, does it provide savings?
Oh, I see. Okay. Someone wrote in the chat, California buying experience pain, having to go to an out-of-the-way location with a parking lot versus Tesla cars in shopping mall. Oh, that's a really good point.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. The Tesla cars can be parked in the shopping mall. That's interesting because I'll tell you what, again, not buying a car, have no knowledge of what happens when you start looking at buying a car. But around me, I live in East London and they're trying to make it all green. And tying back to what Anit was saying, people are buying Tesla cars because they're the only ones that are allowed to get a parking permit under your building because you have a charging station so that you're allowed to park those cars. But right now, for new residents in the area, there's no parking permits available. So you see more and more people, well, either not buying cars or you have those that can afford to buy a Tesla or buying a Tesla because there is no other way. That's the only way they can actually park their car within 15 minutes of their homes.
That's so interesting. Also I was thinking so Tesla's actually announced, I think they announced to their shareholders that they're planning to launch an autonomous car sharing program in like a few years or something. So that would sort of take care of Will Chen's issue with the warranty because then he doesn't really have to own a car and not have to worry about any of that stuff.
Yeah, very true. And if I ever want a car, this would be great because I don't want to buy it. I have nowhere to park it otherwise.
I feel the same. I live in New York.
Yeah.
So I guess Tesla did their research and their value proposition canvas and try to fit it. So that is already part of their roadmap.
So then what happens to the taxi drivers though?
Well,
because
I mean, I guess
you can create a great product, but then you're basically destroying an entire industry.
I don't know about that because a lot of people, for example, that will be traveling in and out, will maybe just want to get a cab, right? If you're in a city, like even if there was a ride sharing service, let's say in New York, do you see yourself always using that, or do you see yourself also maybe hailing a yellow taxi or yellow cab or like getting an Uber?
Well, I feel like there's going to definitely be a transition period, but I can see like it just being autonomous car sharing, like in Westworld. You
Yeah.
watch the show? Yeah,
Yeah.
like it's that little white car that goes around where you can hail it and it just brings you everywhere you want.
Yeah. Well, I guess it's going to be interesting how the public infrastructure kind of changes along with these different things that come into play, right? So, for example, back to your point on destroys an industry. So I know in London when like the Uber drivers came in, the black taxi drivers were obviously scared for their jobs because they are tied to a black taxi. They study for 3 years. They know the roads in the back of their heads. Like you can tell them anywhere. They don't need a map to take you there. So they've actually earned it. They've spent years studying to be able to take this test and get this taxi. And just because Uber comes in and oh, someone's asking how do you apply this to a new digital product? I'll get to that, but it's a similar concept in terms of like how in the market what moves, right? So now the black taxis are suffering. Their prices are too high. Uber is very inexpensive. The government is doing things where they want to reduce pollution. So all these black taxis are now green, operating either fully electric. Um, and so now people kind of want to help them out. So you see people that are now moving towards the black taxis because A, they're safer, they've got a division, they're very particular about their COVID protocols. So you're gonna see this tension in the market as new products and services come in, right? There's always gonna be that tension between what's there today and what's happening today and new things coming in that are taking over.
Would it be beneficial for a company to sort of just keep in mind, like, okay, so I'm going to be destroying this entire industry and these families are going to not have food to eat. Like, so I'm going to create like a foundation to sort of make sure that like their pensions are paid or create like some kind of like partnership so that like, you know, the yellow taxis like can like license out something that's on their cab to like the new Tesla systems. Like, so like if you add something to the top of like a yellow taxi, like a big like blinker yellow thing that says taxi on it, near NYC taxi, and basically license that object to the Tesla autonomous car share so that at least that money is going into the taxi drivers' pensions through the union. What do you think about that?
I mean, that's a great idea, and but Tesla is in the business to make money. It is not in the business to do public service.
But isn't there some worth in that, like being mindful of like the people that you're affecting and trying to come up with solutions to also make sure they're okay at a small cost to them? Because I mean, paying that licensing fee probably isn't, you know, is so little in compared to what they're going to be making by taking over that entire industry.
Well, yeah, I mean, it would be, and I guess you'd have to then identify from your business model and your costs and the money that you're the ROI on what you're trying to do and the time and effort it's going to take to do this to then understand if it makes sense for the business.
Have you ever seen any companies do that? I mean, I guess they do. Like Tom's, like donates like the shoe to South America, or like Warby Parker donates eyeglasses every time someone buys something.
Yeah,
I guess it exists.
there's a few companies that do give back, right? There are companies that will support their communities that they create. They might be giving back to other parts of the world, but not all businesses are driven by that, are holding themselves accountable to the impact that they're having on people and the broader, I guess, the market. But not all companies prioritize that, right? So, and that's where you start seeing how the trend today in terms of behaviors is that a lot of us that are stepping into being able to have that purchasing power are demanding that businesses hold themselves accountable. They're like just what's happening with Facebook, for example. Their staff being holding their leadership accountable for the kind of data sharing they have or the news and when they start, I guess, labeling things or not in terms of the news posts stories that come out. So you're seeing a drive where people are holding companies and businesses and leaders accountable to the impact and the consequences of their actions. But it's not everybody. There are still people who, for convenience, will, which is a lot of people, for convenience, will buy what makes most sense, right?
Yeah, but I think, you know what? I think it's, I think that's probably they're just the late adopters, right? Because I think as social media platforms get more and more powerful, the power of the people will be enough to basically strangle companies that don't, keep in mind for these things, who are negligent in a sense.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we can go on and on about this.
Okay, sorry.
Sorry, can I interrupt? I think there is question around in the chat. I think it's pretty interesting. It's how we could use this to even value proposition canvas to approach the new market space, and how he will be able to use this to to identify the big picture rather than just focusing on improving the journey as for now.
Oh no. So So that's how do you use this approach to create a new market space? They've primarily been focusing on simplifying the journey rather than identifying. Okay. Yeah. So I think for a new market space, what it implies is that you would have a new target customer segment. So what you would start then doing is using this to understand what your new customer segment within that market, building this value proposition around that. Because you would have already, let's say, if I'm operating in the UK, I've been around for 5 years. Just giving you an example, and I have a digital a lifestyle app, which is just an app. It's an actual like mobile only app that I interact with. It gives me insights on my travels, my recommendations on everything, and I want to expand my market to China. Now, when I do something like this, again, it's a digital product, it's a new market space, but people in this market are different. Their motivations and their behaviors and how they interact with things around them, how they're making their decisions are different. And I can tell you this from experience, because we did in my past when I was in consulting, we did an engagement where we had to build a digital proposition for the US and for China. And oh my God, the markets are so different. Let me just tell you. So if you're a business that's looking to tap into a new market, it's important to build an understanding of who the people are, who your target segment is within the market, what regulations exist, how they might be responding to it, the political climate, the social climate, the technology that's available to them there, because it's going to inform your product, be it digital or physical. Digital even more, because then you have things like the content that they interact with, how they're actually using their digital services. So just something as simple as in China, everyone uses WeChat, right? So a lot of businesses are capitalizing on that and have a separate touch point and channel for their propositions that's just for WeChat, because they need to attract and they need to tap into that market and the lifestyle of the users in that market. Whereas in the US, there is no WeChat. So that was just it was a mobile app that was Android, iOS based. That was a whole different journey. So we had to create two different journeys, keeping in mind the market nuances. And a canvas like this can help you understand that. Yes, so you would use tools like user personas. We talked about that yesterday, which is why we picked up with, once you start building an understanding of your user, so the first half of this canvas, which is the customer jobs, the pains and the gains, that is where you're building an understanding of your users or your customers. And the next bit, which is the value map, is where you're building out a vision of what your product, solution, whatever service, what you may call it is. So what is your idea? What are the different aspects of your idea? What about your idea is actually relieving their pain? And what about your idea is actually creating a gain for your specific customer segment? Does that make sense, Anit? I'm going to wait for you to say yes or no. Does anyone else have any questions? I'm going to quickly wrap up the gain creators as well before we move on. Right, so when we spoke about pain relievers, let's talk about gain creators now. So this is where you show how your product or service adds value to your customers. So how does your product help customers achieve their goals? List everything that offers something new, or improves your user experience. So this is where you can really start understanding what your differentiators are, right? Because you're creating value, but you can also start identifying what is different about you. So here are some questions that might help you define your gain creators. So does your product provide savings that can make your customer happy? Does it ensure that the results that it's driving are in line with what your customer expects? Or does it actually exceed your customer's expectations? Does it simplify the work or the life of your customer? Does it give your customer something to look forward to? Does it give something that your customer wants to get or they dream of but they don't have today? Does your product or service reflect some of their dreams? Does it give positive results that meet their criteria for success or alleviate some of those fears of failure? So that's where you start identifying things that make your product different but also valuable. And it's important to communicate some of this when you look at the business case, right? So when you're pitching, this value proposition canvas is going to be really helpful for you to build something that is desirable and that makes sense for your business, communicate the value that your product or service is delivering for your customer segment, but also identify what differentiates your idea from the competition or in the market. All right, so I'm going to pause here and open up to questions. Any thoughts, comments? Will, do you want to add anything to it? Any thoughts from you?
No, not at this point. Probably I can give some example in terms of the game creator on the car example.
Yes, please.
Like I'm looking for fast. I mean, an example will be, if you look at Tesla, it's like performance. You could go 0 to 100 for 4 seconds, around 4 to 5 seconds. That is something like a game creator for me. And of course, the inside there is this digital screen that is 17-inch. Make it look so high tech and luxurious. That will be another game creators on the design and style perspective. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Thank you, Will. Yep, that's thank you for the example.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I think I like the fact that it can parallel park by itself.
Nice. Yep. The target audience depends on what is the pain and gains and what the jobs to be done from the customer segment side. Then you can look at identify the different game creators for the right target audience. In your case, one of your pain might be parking might be difficult, for example.
Yeah, in the city.
Then the game creator will be the automatic park.
Okay, so it's like a paired thing. You have
I think as much as we want, we want to feed it, so you get the market fit. You see, the product and services, you feed it with your customers. So if it doesn't, I think this just one point to note that you don't end here. I mean, after you complete once, it's always iterative. So if you look at your product and services, is there any gaps? So if there is, then work on your product, iterate from there, so that you can find the maximum gap between the maximum fit between the customer segment and the product and services.
Yeah. And I think someone had a question around, couldn't pain relievers also be considered gain creators? So I just wanted to quickly give you an example of that. So a pain point, for example, with this car buying journey, could be that you have to drive 15, 20 kilometers to get to a petrol station or gas station. And it's not easily accessible, it's not near you. You're not... Oftentimes you forget and then you're running low and you can't get to the point that you want to get to. Now, if that's a pain point, a pain reliever for that could be that you have a let's just talk about Tesla, because we did a pain reliever with the Tesla is that you have a charging station at your home, and you have charging stations along the way. If you're living, I don't know, if you're living in an area where they're there every few minutes, so you have charging stations that are across. You also have one in your home, so that solves for the pain point. But in terms of the gain creator, it's not a gain creator really. It's more of a pain reliever. When I talk about gain creator, I'm talking about things like autonomous cars, right? Taking away the actual like driving altogether. So giving you more, or making you think about, as a customer, thinking about your goal and designing something that is more that exceeds your expectation or exceeds your current state. And it's important to do this because a lot of times people say, oh, but you know, if you ask a customer what they want and they tell you exactly that and you give them that, you often don't leave time or space for original thinking or the next gen idea, right? And this is where the gain creators come in, which is you're thinking about things that are helping them achieve their emotional goals or their goals that they may be thinking of, but there's nothing that points to a specific need currently.
So I got a question. Like, so this parallel parking feature that Tesla has, so like that only actually solves the, you know, a pain of a certain population, basically like urban population where there's not a lot of parking, and street parking is very hard. But so like, how does a company decide like, well, that's a feature that's worth keeping, even though like maybe 70% of the population don't live in the urban population? Like, how do you make that kind of decision?
It depends on a lot of factors. One could be the cost of doing something versus the benefit it will deliver, right? So you can think about maybe 70% of your target audiences in the rural areas, and they don't need this feature. But what percentage of your audience that is going to be able to afford your car, buy your car, is interested in being green, will actually and is going to make that decision to buy your car, is interested in that feature. That's going to inform that.
Okay, that totally makes sense. Also,
Right?
just the benefit of our customer. Okay.
Yeah. That's the cost and benefit analysis. And that's where all of this found the foundational elements and gives you a view that you can then start building your business model around. So the value proposition canvas is meant to be complementary to when you start understanding your business case and your business model. Shreya, I feel like you had a question.
I did. So, so I just wanted to know, sometimes the value proposition for a customer is in tension with the value proposition for a business. And it's hard, even though you might want to enter this whole process with a blank slate so that you can, you know, find solutions which are out of the box. It's sometimes hard to, you know, put the business needs sort of in the back. So how do you actually make sure that, like, since you have had experience designing things for users in different countries, how do you actually make sure that you're really focusing on what the user needs without really thinking about the business to start off with? Like, how do you navigate that sort of tension?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question because, and that's something that I guess we all face at different aspects, and that's a battle, that's an uphill battle that you climb when you put anything in front of stakeholders, in any, like, for example, in large organizations and financial institutions, right? So you go to a bank, they all have, oh, well, I have this particular numbers target, this is the only budget I have, and I feel like we need to do this. But if you really come up, so in my experience, when we've been part of these engagements from the get-go, when we're talking about the strategy and the vision for the business, it's always about the customer, and the customer could be anyone. It could be internal users, it could be external, like external impact. So let's say retail customers, corporate customers, but your business doesn't exist if someone's not going to buy your product or service, right? So your business has to respond to a need in the market, a need maybe for your segment, a gap, and needs to capitalize on understanding where things are going and how you can deliver value along the way. and delivering value needs to be, someone needs to be getting the value out of it, right? So a business doesn't exist without a customer, because you're not making money, you're not selling anything, you can't function in a vacuum. So you start with the customer, but when you have business priorities that may be in tension with the customer needs, it's not about, you can use it as a way to prioritize. So let's say the customer needs are XYZ, and we can only deliver 20% of it because 20% of it makes sense for the business. That's fine. As long as the 20% that you're doing is actually delivering value to your customer. The problem arises when the businesses start making decisions that are not thought through, that do not understand what the customers are asking for, and they're just pushing out features and functions with no research. And you see a lot of times banks are very well known to do that, and it lands flat. A lot of their digital, when they say that they're suffering digital adoption issues, it's because you didn't actually do your customer research right.
Thank you so much. That's really interesting. And, I think, and I have a follow-up question, if that's okay. So sometimes when you're creating these user personas, it's hard to sort of, I think, like, Anita raised something which was interesting about how, businesses should actually add value to society as a whole. But I think that people who are discussing this sometimes tend to be in a little echo chamber. And then we tend to create personas who think like us when we're trying to make sure that when we're actually trying to make sure that all different kinds of customers are sort of included. So do you have any tips on how you make sure that you're actually selecting different people when you're doing this value propositioning exercise as well? Do you usually do it for each persona, or do you do it just in general?
Yeah, so there's different starting points for the value prop canvas, and I'm not sure if you were there for this session yesterday, but that's where we talked about the customer research side of things, which is how do you select your the personas that you want to work with, or how do you make sure that you're representing the whole spectrum of opinions that people might have about your service or product. And yeah, if you have it, I'm sharing the extreme users graph, if you can see it.
Yeah, I see it. Yeah.
So our recommendation, and especially when we look at starting a new project or looking at a new value proposition that we want to design for a specific market, let's say it comes from a business need, and the business need could be, hey, I want to expand into a new market. Okay, so first let's understand who are our target users in that market for this particular, maybe it's a line of business or it's an offering. Now within that target market, who are our existing users, who are the potential new users, and then within the existing users, there may be people that love you, or hate you. And it's important to look at both. It's important to look at people that absolutely hate your product, but they're stuck with it and they have nothing else. They can't get out of it, but they just have to use it. Or there are people that maybe there's a new subscription that's come out and they just don't want to engage with you. So they could be late adopters. Or there could be people that are super excited, have been looking forward to it, or early adopters. And so it's important to understand both their motivations. The least amount of value you get from feedback is from people who generally agree with you, or generally don't have anything to love or hate. If they're strictly okay, they'll not give you the best feedback. So you want to get the very diverse and informing what you're doing in your strategy.
Thanks. This is a really great framework.
Yeah. Just to add to that, I think one of the tips that I usually do so that my persona are not biased is basically using data that coming out from the interviews. I think Tanaya mentioned about the different existing customers. So what we will do is really interview these customers, getting the data, getting the demographic. So with all this data that is coming from the user interview, then you populate that on the persona rather than you create it yourself. And the second tips, for example, if you cannot access to some of these users, don't do it alone, do it as a team, so that you validate one another to make sure that this persona do make sense, to portray the right user.
Thanks. So that was really useful too. Thanks a lot, Will.
Yes,
You are
I think
welcome.
Rahima also asked a question. Is it a good idea to include a service user representative in your team, someone who represents a larger target market, opinions on your service? If so, how do you choose them? Yes, absolutely. So if you have someone, if you know someone that could be your target user and they're happy to be part of your journey, it is so valuable to have them, just to bounce ideas off of them, just to understand if what you're doing makes sense from your end customer perspective, if you're prioritizing the right things. Because if you're an entrepreneur, you know that you have your own ideas and you have people around you, or you surround yourself with people that will echo similar things. But we often don't go down to inviting people who into that conversation who we're solving for, right? So now you'll see businesses having customer advisory boards. You'll have folks having like focus groups with their customers, to basically make sure that you're having that voice throughout your process. And it can be someone, it could be someone from a sales function or someone as a relationship manager who, for a bank is what I'm saying. So if for a bank, for example, it could be a relationship manager that represents the customer's voice, or it could be you want to invite the customers themselves. So we have workshops that we do when we're like ideation sessions where we do with our customers. But we also invite our customers as customers. So it's not just the banks, but it's the bank's end users. So whether it's an SME or it's a retail customer or it's a large corporate, we bring them into the workshop as well. So when we're defining this value proposition and the questions that we're asking ourselves, we're also asking them, and they can feed into it. They can also feed into, maybe they have ideas, so they can also feed into the ideas. And they can definitely feed into the prioritization of what features and functions could be that minimum viable product. Rima, does that answer your question? And how do you choose them is again, it's similar. You want to make sure that they are championing the voice of your user, and you want to make sure that they're representing different perspectives and being objective about it.
I feel like this is a really tricky thing, because a lot of people have a hard time hearing things that they don't understand. So yeah, definitely someone who's like very empathetic, is able to listen to very different viewpoints, is like definitely essential for your team in regards to this, I feel like. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. And when I was talking about relationship managers, right, and banks, ultimately their goals are to service the needs of their users, right, and to drive loyalty and drive the support. So when they come into the conversation, and you can tell from a person how empathetic they are, right? But they're motivated to champion the voice of the customer because at the end of the day, it benefits them as well. So pick people as well you could pick people who are generally like will directly benefit from being honest and caring about what their customer thinks and feels.
So when you say relationship manager, do you mean like your banking relationship person? Like
yes.
Okay, so the person that's sort of tagged to each person. Okay, got it. Do credit unions do that as well? Like, do they tag a person with a specific relationship manager, or is that more of like a tier 1 bank service?
So it doesn't have to be the relationship manager, just that, right? It could also be the customer support function. It could be the contact center representatives that are listening day in and day out to complaints or phone calls, who'll be able to tell you what people are saying and what makes their lives hard and difficult, and what are some of the burning issues that need to be addressed.
So those like surveys at the end of the calls are really important. Someone's actually really listening.
I mean, if they care about their customers, then yes, they should be listening. Don't know how much they are.
Yeah.
So they should.
Yeah, I think once you identify that particular person that is really willing to do that, mark them as the sponsor user, that not only at the beginning of your project, but throughout the project, you could do a lot of validation with them. When you have the prototype, you can show it to them as well to get feedback, to iterate from there. it's really hard to come by to find them, though.
but yeah, exactly like what Will said. It's very, very. If you do find one, it's amazing, and you should tap into that as much as possible, even if it's just to bounce ideas and to help you prioritize your thinking.
No,
Right.
I feel like
Tanaya, sorry, Anita, go ahead.
oh, I feel like that would be really cool if someone created like this AI robot that sort of was this complaining, like, you know, a crowdsourcing place where people just put all their complaints in, and then like you use some algorithm and it spits out like validation points for your product.
Yeah, but again, you'd run into the same issue there, which is, can you truly build an unbiased AI?
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
And also, are you? I mean, this whole the reason for this hackathon, hacking away bias in technology, comes in as well, right? Just get the human beings in the room and hear what they have to say, so that you can ask some follow-up questions as well, and ask them things that they might not have considered, things that might not come out in a survey, things that might not come out in the analytics that you're collecting from your software or tool. There's a lot of value in the one-to-one human interviews, because there's a lot of follow-up, there's threads you can pursue, there's other questions that pop up, but you just have to be mindful of the fact that the interview isn't about you. It shouldn't be leading, it's about listening.
Tanaya, just being conscious on the time is 10:08. Would you want to close up or take last question before we close it off?
I think we should close it off, unless anyone else has any questions. Anita, if you have more questions, we can set up another time. Feel free to like ping us and book an hour. We also have office hours coming up, so if you want to join any of those sessions, we'd be happy to take your questions.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you so much, guys.
Yeah, perfect. I will put my email here. Thanks, Rahima. Does anyone else have any questions before we end the call, or comments? Hopefully the template made sense. One last thing I will add, if you guys want your own neural board, because I know this is a shared one, everyone can see it, but if you want to work through it, I am happy to create a private version of this for you, so then you can add your own post-its and start collecting those insights. But with that said, thank you very much, everyone. So just ping me. Sorry, Isha. Just ping me on what's it called? On Slack, or send me an email with your contact details, and I'll create a mural board for you. All right, guys, thank you very much for attending this session. We are doing a couple more. The next one is going to be around the prototyping aspects and how you can use our the Finastra, the Fusion Fabric Cloud design system and APIs into your ideas. And I think one after that is about how you craft your pitch. So I guess once you have an idea, how do you communicate what that whole concept is in a succinct 2 to 3 minute pitch? Sid, did you have anything to say? I heard you go off mute.
Oh, just wanted to say thanks.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for joining. And thank you, Will. It was nice having you. I know you're in Singapore, so everyone, Will has joined us very late in his time. So thank you, Will.
Thank you. Thanks, Will.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thanks for joining. Thank you, Tanaya.
Perfect. Well, have a lovely day. Bye, guys.
Bye. Bye, everyone. Have a good evening. Have a good day ahead.